You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast.
Welcome to Thank You for Your Servers, a show which looks at the tech news of today, but from a libertarian perspective. Now here are your hosts, Thaddeus and Gary.
All right. Thank you for logging into Thank You for Your Servers. I'm Thaddeus Preston, a.k.a. Nick Way. And joining me today, as always, my co-host, Gary Guthrie. How you doing, sir?
Doing great. Sitting over here on the left coast and recovering from a long road trip with my son today.
Bonding. You gotta love it. All right. So this is our mostly weekly talk or rants about the tech news of the weeks at this point from a Liberty perspective. This and other podcasts are brought to you by the MLGA network of podcasts. And we are going to start with a brief synopsis of E3 because I've lost all my enthusiasm for E3 because it was almost 2 weeks ago. Were you even aware of E3, Gary? Did you know anything about it?
I was in the middle of a backyard remodel and dealing with contractors, so I got to be perfectly honest with you. No.
Well, for those who aren't aware of E3 and its importance, it's on the Geeks Gaming calendar. It is the Electronic Entertainment Expo, hence E3. Clever. It's a once-a-year confab of kind of not necessarily tech companies, but video game companies, video game studios getting together. It is their Coachella. It is their South by Southwest. It is their CES. And it is pretty much where everybody comes and just says, hey, here are the cool games. It's huge keynotes. It's pomp and circumstance. And this year, the big news coming out of it was probably first and foremost the absence of Sony. Probably because Sony a couple of months earlier revealed pretty much what it intended on providing when it came to next generation consoles and its cloud gaming strategy, as well as some key games and new hardware that's going to be coming out in the fall going into next year. So that left this year's E3 exclusively at the hands of really kind of a couple big players. First off the bat is Microsoft. Microsoft kicked off things a day before the actual E3 conference kicked off, and they talked about their Project Scarlet. Project Scarlet is just nothing more than their new console that they'll be debuting 2020, probably just in time for Christmas. It's basically going to be this kind of, basically a supercomputer circa 2007 in the hood of these things. And it's going to have all this real-time ray tracing. It's going to have all this new faster memory, and the graphics are going to be better, yada, yada, yada. They also took the opportunity to kind of point out their cloud streaming gaming strategy. And it's not just streaming gaming in the sense that you can watch guys, like PewDiePie play like a first-person shooter. It's actually being able to play these games over the cloud without having this soon-to-be supercomputing hardware sitting on your, be it your desktop or in your entertainment center to play these games.
Well, that'll be a lifesaver for me, because if I have to build one more gaming computer for my kids, my pocketbook is gonna.
Wow, you're part of the old school, man. People still do that. That's weird. I mean, I understand PC gaming is going to always be above and beyond anything you can get on the console. I mean, I think they're going to be using for this Project Scarlet Xbox new or whatever they'll call it. They're going to be using current generation of NVIDIA, or not NVIDIA, of Radeon chipsets or graphics processors that were announced via during E3. I don't think they announced them at E3. If you kind of a side note though, there's so much power in these 16 core 7 nanometer gaming CPUs. I went and did some digging. It has pretty much the equivalent peak performance of a DOE supercomputer from 2007.
It's insane.
So Moore's Law, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be in the equivalent of both of these consoles, both Sony's and Xbox's. But the big news, I think, as I alluded to before I got off on that tangent about supercomputers, was the fact that you can stream these via the cloud.
Amazing.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. And my prediction has proven right, though it's hard to claim, I was right on a prediction because no one outside of my audience has ever heard me say this. And that's that I knew this generation of consoles was going to be the last physical hardware. I think Microsoft is really talking up the fact that, they still need physical discs to deliver these things and deliver these games. There's going to real-time ray tracing and stuff like that. There are advantages to having a piece of supercomputing hardware that are going to be able to kind of, do things. But as time goes on, I imagine, they'll come out with some box for the next iteration of gaming, but this box will strictly be for streaming gaming and entertainment. It won't be, it'll be a powerful box, but it won't be this thing. It'll be
optimized for the cloud gaming experience is what it's going to be.
That's it. I mean, and truth be told, I mean, this hardware arms race can't last forever, though I am quite impressed. I can imagine with the 10-year life cycles of these consoles of what's that new, there's a Oak Ridge National Labs has a supercomputer called Summit. It's currently number 1. I can imagine. Could you imagine having like that performance in 10 years in a desktop gaming PC or just?
Honestly, I kind of can imagine it just because what we have now is comparable to, a 10-year-old supercomputer. I mean, the stuff that we can go to Fry's Electronics and just buy. I'm
jealous of you, by the way, that you have a Fry's. Move on.
Oh, you don't have them there.
Proceed.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't.
My bad.
When I lived in California, I remember Fry's, and it was typically my Friday afternoon escape. I would deal with the Bay Area traffic just so I could get to a Fry's.
What was now? Just not to get off on too much of a tangent. What was the theme of the Fry's that you went to?
They had themes.
Because all of them have a theme. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
No, I didn't notice that. I was just happy to have a place where I could get like random electronics and cheap Chinese electronics and goods that was nearby.
Oh, the one here that I go to is kind of a Italian villa theme.
Really? Oh wow, I was unaware that was a thing with Fry's. Okay.
There's another one that's a space shuttle theme. They have a mock-up of a space shuttle, and then they have astronauts throughout the stores. It's a thing, or at least it was last time I was there. Huh. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fun. Anyway, not to get too much on a tangent, but it's fun.
That was kind of a cool side tangent. I will next time I go to the left coast, or at least the time zone that is, I guess the Pacific, because I think there's one in Las Vegas. I'm gonna have to look out for that. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway.
So.
Well, you said we were gonna geek out. So.
No. Yeah, we are definitely geeking out when it comes to that. But no. Okay. So other than the fact that these things are gonna be more. This is the first iteration of these next generation consoles that we're going to, not necessarily rely on the cloud, but the cloud is going to be a chief component of it. That moves me to Google Stadia. Google Stadia also had a kind of a big debut when it came to E3, and we finally got some pricing. So it's essentially going to be about $12 a month for Project Stadia, or not Project
on
Stadia.
par with pretty much any cloud.
Yeah, pretty much.
Service.
I think Netflix is that. I think I think isn't Xbox Live, I think, has that same price point and stuff like that.
Microsoft 365, same thing.
Yeah,
It's
I
all
think they've all
kind of around the same, $12. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it's going to be. I mean, I guess there's some Founders Edition like Stadia package you can get. That's like $170, and that comes with a controller and I think a 4K Chromecast. For that kind of bundle, but who cares about that?
I don't.
But the other big news is like Google and Microsoft weren't the only people talking about cloud streaming gaming and subscription services. More subscription services. Like I think Ubisoft announced their subscription service. And the fact of the matter is that if you are on their subscription service with games and you do pay and their subscription service is $15 a month, and on top of that, like if you have a Project Stadia, oh God, I keep calling it Project Stadia, Google Stadia. If you have a Google Stadia account, you will actually be able to play your Ubisoft Uplay Plus games via, Google Stadia. And
Oh, wow. Okay.
so we're so it's all starting to converge. I think Google might make itself a player in this space. There were also some announcements from Nintendo. I'm not really excited about that. I mean, so it was kind of like it was a cool E3, right? I mean, I think the big story from E3 wasn't necessarily even the fact that Sony wasn't there and that everyone's going streaming and subscription. It's that Keanu Reeves is the likeness in a game called Cyberpunk 2077. And that ended up being super important and like a super big story. And I was just like, I mean, that's good for him. I'm glad that this very mediocre actor is finding like a renaissance in the fact that like he's
actually he has gained. He's become a meme. I don't know if you've noticed, but he has actually
become a meme. This is true. He has become pop culture.
He's become the ultimate wholesome good guy, and my daughter and I have bonded over this. It's actually kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, it's good, right? Because it's not his movies now play to his strengths as an actor, which aren't many, and he's now made. You got to think he's made 3 or 4 beloved franchises in his career.
Yes.
If you look at it, you're just like, I mean, not a guy of great depth, but he's just now this new phenomenon. And I think it's because he's such a humble guy, and I think that's what
he does. One thing, acting wise, he does one thing and he does it well.
Yeah,
whoa, and but as a person, he is an amazingly complex and giving person. Anyway, not to get too much off on him, but
and that's probably why. I mean, the guy got like this huge like rock. Well, I mean, it's not hard to get a rock star like ovation at E3, surrounded by geeks like ourselves. I mean, they're happy. I mean, they were applauding the fact that like, Project Scarlet's going to have real-time ray tracing in 8K resolution. I mean, granted, an impressive computational feat, but not worthy of standing up. You ever seen that meme where the kid who looks like a bird just with his mouth wide open just starts clapping and looking around and telling everybody that how amazing this is? I mean, that's basically what it is when you go to E3, right? It's just like people are sitting there crying in the aisles because Cyberpunk 2077's coming out. It's kind of like that. It's like going to a Bieber concert circa 2011 or something.
See, you've sold me on this. I've got to go down just to see the show. I mean, it's got to be hilarious.
I mean, I looked at 2 or 3 of these keynotes. Big up to Engadget, and who else does a really good one? Like The Verge and stuff, where they really take these 2-hour keynotes and like distill them down to like 12 minutes or something. And you get these great like synopsis of like what happened and how And it's kind of ridiculous what they announced and what people clap over, right? But
I will watch it to see people clap over something ridiculous. That's
it's actually
my entertainment these
pretty
days.
hilarious. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't be wowed at some of the stuff, and maybe I might have, clapped and hoot and hollered a little bit when Keanu Reeves came on stage. But here's the thing. I'm not a gamer, right? I mean, I watch the space because of its technological progress, because of its cultural relevance, but it's, I'm not going to go out and, I'm probably going to subscribe to Google Stadia for a month or two, play it for a hot minute, and the cool thing, maybe just not touch it again. I mean, every time I tell my wife I'm going to buy a console, she looks at me sideways and says, "Really?" Because I bought them before, and I played them for a grand total of 30 days, and I've thrown them aside.
Does she understand the significance of this one?
Yeah, that's always the selling point, right? This is going to be the last physical console one could ever buy. No, really, I'm super.
It's all cloud. Come on, you gotta understand.
That was my selling point, right? It was just like, hey, it's the cloud, which means I don't even really have to buy like a controller, right? I could just subscribe to it and bring it up on I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to run it on an Apple TV or Roku or Fire TV,
right?
Or even if we update our big screen TV, it'll be one of the software options for my Samsung app, one of my Samsung apps on my TV or something like that, So
it could be.
It's a good selling point. It's a cheap entry point. Because this console is going to be $500 plus God knows how much. And that would make me angry if I spent that kind of money and I only played 2 or 3 games for a couple months and then stopped touching it, right?
Unless you're sponsored and getting that money back somehow, yeah, not worth it.
It's like that. That is not a solicitation for gaming sponsors to sponsor this week. this podcast.
No, not at all.
Yeah, thank you for your service, part of the MLGA network. Yeah, I mean, there's no. We weren't
clearly not my intent.
No, not my intent at all. All right, well, that's all I have on E3, man. Because I know you ain't got much.
Excellent.
On it. Yeah, but next.
Nope.
I tell you, right, there you go. It's. This is non-political. There wasn't a whole lot of SJW nonsense, I would imagine. I mean, this is kind of, even though Gamergate was a thing, this is kind of one of the last industries that the SJWs haven't fully screwed up. And I'm happy, right? I mean, it's just technological achievement. It's men and women and people of color and your LGBTQ, AARP types and stuff. It doesn't matter, man. As long as you're making good games, you're being creative,
you know what?
And you're excited about
socially,
this stuff.
Socially, the nerd community has always been, and I can speak to this from experience since, the early 80s when I was getting into it with my first Atari 2600,
Yeah.
The nerd community has always been the most inclusive, accepting community out there just because they have always been
the most marginalized.
Well, traditionally. Exactly.
Yeah.
The most bullied,
Yeah.
the most marginalized, or at least equally to some of the other ones. And I can't speak to the other ones because I don't know, but the nerd community has always been a safe place. I hate to use that
safe
term,
space.
but it really it has been.
It has traditionally been a safe space. This is absolutely true. And it was very, very disconcerting and upsetting when the Gamergate thing kind of kicked off and the whole drama with Colin Moriarty kicked off and all these other guys, because it's just dude, it's just games, man. These games have been making social commentary forever, and if anything, it's advanced liberalism. So it's kind of disappointing when they politicize and kind of destroy that type of stuff. But I didn't get a whole lot of that vibe this year. And maybe it's because I don't pay that close attention. Maybe there was some SJW subliminal messaging. Didn't get it. I was just happy to see, like, one, there's a new player in the game space, and that's Google, right? Now, long term, will Google kind of be, I don't know, right? Google is I mean, I have a long list of services that Google are killing off this week too. So this could be a thing, which is another reason why I don't want to invest a whole lot of time in Google Stadia, right? Just like just make the barrier to entry pretty cheap, and so like when you pull the rug from under me, I'm like, well, whatever, right? And then I just move on with it. All right, so moving on from that happy geekdom to some more kind of serious news, and that is Huawei has patents, ladies and gentlemen, and they ain't afraid to use them. So, as we had predicted previously, if you are a listener to the podcast, Huawei has a lot of 5G patents. It has been amassing said 5G patents over the last 5 to 10 years because they missed the 4G boat. And now they're starting to weaponize those patents. And one of the chief reasons and catalysts for them doing so is this ongoing horrible trade war that we're going through with China. So, Huawei Technologies has come under unrelenting pressure from the Trump administration. And the Chinese telecommunication giant has one advantage that the U.S. can't undermine: its vast global portfolio of patents on critical technologies. Get this, 56,492.
Patents?
Yes. That's how many they have.
Wow.
And they can press them on really two big companies. And you'll recognize the names: Verizon Communications and Qualcomm. So it's kind of one of those things where, they can exert pressure and definitely pump the brakes on the build out of 5G networks here and abroad, or at least abroad in places that are kind of, let's be blunt, under the imperial thumb of the United States, because they've been pressuring a lot of European countries via these intelligence sharing agreements if they were to deploy any of Huawei's equipment on their networks as they build out their 5G networks and maintain their LTE networks. They've been basically saying, well, the United States will reserve the right to cut off intelligence sharing with said Western European countries. If you guys use Huawei equipment, that's basically now starting to close off a lot of those markets to Huawei. On the flip side of that, they're forming alliances with less than friendly regimes in the United States. They had signed an agreement to start building out 5G equipment in Russia just lately. So there's this global chess game that's going on when it comes to Huawei. In the tech industry, the Trump administration has already brought one Chinese firm that was in the telecommunications space to its knees. That is ZTE, and that's why you can't get cheap ZTE phones in your Verizon store, your AT&T store, T-Mobile stores, because again, sanctions placed on by the Trump administration to exert pressure on the Chinese, on the Chinese, let's call it regime, to basically play fair. I use air quotes when I say fair in our trade disputes. This was a long time coming, Gary.
Yep.
And I warned against this. Like, we may hold the cards in many other industries, but they're pain points that the Chinese regime via their corporate with their corporate tendrils and everything that can exert on us. This is going to definitely slow.
Well, they're no dummies. I mean, you don't get into the international marketplace without it's not really an ace up your sleeve, but without ammunition. And this is when I saw it come out in the news, I knew this was some of the biggest ammunition that was available, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and and they're well within their right to attempt to do it. I mean,
hell yeah, they are.
So I don't, I mean, it's going to suck for us. I mean, and it seems to be escalating more, right? So in lieu of that, I'm reading here in CNN Business, the U.S. Commerce Department just yesterday, as we record this, is placing restriction on American companies doing business with like Chinese entities that make supercomputers. And it's again, a lot of these companies are going to show up on this infamous entity list. And
it's all ostensibly for security and privacy and blah, blah, blah. We all know what it's really for.
Right. I mean, on the one hand, one is to always be guarded with your privacy. But at the same time, man, I tend to think, and really outside of the realm of this whole trade dispute, and outside of the realm of the whole government versus the people thing, I think sometimes people often use this privacy as just kind of a crutch to not only bludgeon their opponents in the arena of the market, but also just as kind of this thing that like it's kind of like one of those things where people like they say they want privacy, but they don't. Their actions dictate otherwise, or like people say they want to at January 1st that they want to go to the gym, and so subscriptions to gyms spike up and people whatever. But like at the end of the day, in the real world, no one gives a damn, and by February the gyms are God by February the gyms are cleaned out.
Well, ultimately, the privacy security thing, more than a crutch, it's a fear tactic. And it's a tool available to use to trigger, and not trigger people, but you put it out there and you say, okay, there is a threat that somebody is going to steal your identity. They'll say something vague like that.
Yeah.
And, I say it's vague. I mean, it's a very real threat, but at the same time, I don't think most people understand what that really means or how it happens. And the visceral reaction that comes from somebody saying there is this threat is, I must defend. How do I defend? Right. Absolutely. We must ban them. Yeah, we must not do business with them because they will steal my identity. And I don't know. Do what with it,
Yeah.
So
and I mean, Apple plays this up a lot, particularly, when they want to slap at Google, and a lot of companies play this up. But I mean, it's again to kind of roll this into why there's so much xenophobia and stuff like that. The two things can be true at the same time. There is a history of industrial espionage orchestrated by Chinese companies who have had either implicit or explicit backing by the Chinese communist government. This is known. This is not hyperbole. This is just true. At the same time, that doesn't mean that is true of all Chinese companies. And that doesn't mean that there isn't security measures and really other types of measures we can put into place that, make it harder for these companies to do this type of industrial espionage and still allow us to get access to things like Huawei equipment, WeChat, or whatever. Now, I understand not to I'll put my MAGA hat on and then I will ask for forgiveness when I take it off later. I understand what the Trump administration is trying to do because it has not been a reciprocal relationship when it comes to intellectual property and trade between us and China for 25 years. This is just true.
Correct.
And my libertarian instincts would tell me, well, that is what it is. We would just outcompete with them. But I can understand the concern if there's not a reciprocation of trade or intellectual property. That being said, this thing is kind of becoming lunacy, right? I mean, there's so much cultural, scientific, and financial exchange between us now. So we know it's not going to be a shooting war, right? So that much is certain, right?
Right.
But from a cyber standpoint, you don't think we're not going to take shots at each other in cyberspace? this is
we have to.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to, because the way that, I mean, cyberspace is so different than the physical space, and the reality, as you just described, is very real. Because and even if it's not the big players, the Chinese government, the Huawei's, the whatever, there are individuals and there are groups out there who will actively seek to exploit whatever vulnerabilities they can find. And they may be doing it under the radar, you know? So
Indeed.
I think there's a legitimate fear and there's a legitimate caution that we have to take. But, you know, you have to, from a risk management standpoint, what is the real risk here? You know?
Yeah.
And that's the question that I don't think most people are asking. Most people are just succumbing to the fear of, oh my God, somebody's going to get my private information, blah, blah. And they don't even know what that means.
The Chinese are going to embed, systems.
they're gonna
embed stuff in our infrastructure systems that are going to take advantage of this and that. And it's like,
they're going to inject chips in my children. You watch.
You watch. Yeah, it's hysterical. And honestly, I think the reason why, particularly the U.S. government's hysterical about it, is because the same types of techniques that we are accusing the Chinese of doing for industrial espionage, let's be blunt, are the same things that we do. So,
oh, the hell you say. There is no... I thought you put your MAGA hat on. What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. I took it off a second ago. But
you took it off for a second. Okay.
So it is, that stuff. Oh, God. So this continues. Huawei is starting to fight back. And
yep.
in the world will be terrible for the foreseeable future unless we kind of come to some sort of friendly conclusion to this ugly trade war that is affecting many people on many different levels. All right, so should we get to the elephant in the room? Should we get to it?
Let's do it.
All right,
do it.
The Facebook Libra. So, ladies and gentlemen, after many months and much speculation, it has finally been revealed that Facebook's plans to absolutely revolutionize currency. So, I'll start with you, Gary. So, what did you think? What little you've heard, right? What do you think of the Facebook Libra? What compels you about this? What's the good, the bad, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, I don't understand the Libra. I understand cryptocurrency in general, and I've read the white papers, and I've, kind of tinkered around in it. Unfortunately, I did not buy when I should have bought, but
Bitcoin at 10,000 as we record this.
It's crazy, but I don't. I look at Facebook's Libra play and the timing of it at right at when Bitcoin is taken off like a skyrocket, and I just don't understand their motivation in it, other than to capture another piece of humanity to add to their collection. I just don't understand their approach here.
So here's how I see it, right? So first, I get where they're coming from, right? And I just tucked my MAGA hat off and threw it in the corner, and now I'm going to put on my my Austria libertarian hat.
Oh, okay.
This is what a free market in currency looks like. This is what a free market in money looks like. This is what Austrians have drooled over, right? Is someone or something needs to be able to compete with the central banks of the world. And this is basically at this instance, a consortium of private organizations who were part of
Right.
this Libra association, who were going to be
Okay.
the responsible parties in it. We're talking about people like eBay, Stripe, Visa, Uber, MasterCard, PayPal, Coinbase, Facebook, obviously, Andreessen Horowitz, Kiva. Dude, it's Vodafone in Europe. So it's almost like if the Federal Reserve System is made up of member banks, this new, let's call it parallel Federal Reserve System, is made up of financial institutions, nonprofits. I mean, Coinbase lends a little bit more crypto cred to it, but not a lot. I think it's like, you say what you will about Facebook and its privacy woes, because it's terrible at its job. And truth be told, I don't think it was ever really good at it, and I don't understand why people thought that they would ever be good at it. It's not their business model.
Their whole model is exploiting private data.
Private data. I mean, that's been Web 2. That's been Web 2.0 since Tim O'Reilly coined the term Web 2.0. It's been the business model. I don't understand why we're 15 years later and people are shocked that that's the business model. I mean, it dumbfounds me. Let's also ignore the fact that at Facebook in its conglomerate of social media platforms have become like totalitarian social justice warrior wastelands, right? Okay, they're censoring and they're doing a terrible thing, and I absolutely agree. But I absolutely positively love the fact that there are more players in the crypto market. Now, if you read the kind of synopsis of the white paper, like, they are using a blockchain for validating purchases on the blockchain, and I think they're using kind of the same philosophy, not necessarily the infrastructure, but the same philosophy that the Ethereum uses. They're currently right now they're proof of work, which is how most cryptocurrencies work, and that proof of work basically means you put a lot of computational effort into validating blocks on the chain. And if one solves that block, then and hence validates that transaction on the chain, you get awarded a fractional amount of said currency. That is computationally intensive and actually very energy inefficient. They're eventually going to move to a proof of stake, which is kind of some commie feel-good stuff about, round robin voting and choosing a random person to validate something on the block. I still don't quite understand it, but I mean, competition in the currency market, I think is good.
Well, I think competition anywhere is good.
Right. I think this will make Bitcoin probably a lot of the neckbeards and the basement dwellers that are Bitcoin enthusiasts get off their duff and get the Lightning Network up and running. I think now this actually validates the top 10 cryptocurrencies that exist today. It's one of the reasons Bitcoin is at almost $11,000 right now. From its lows when we started this podcast, God, it had to be $5,000, $6,000.
Oh, it was lower just shortly prior to. I think it was down 3,800.
Oh yeah, okay.
I mean, it was hitting a psychological psychological, what they call that, like a breaking point.
Yeah,
like if it fell below it, it wasn't going to even be worth it to mine it.
And the cool thing about it is that in financial trading terms was its floor. Right? Yeah, that's its support floor, right? So 3,800 is its support floor, and it bounced back up thereafter. It was climbing long before this Bitcoin, before this Facebook Libra initiative.
It was. I mean, I mentioned the timing, but at the same time, it's like.
But it does validate. It does validate it, though. It does validate the crypto space, and I think that's very, very important. And I think Jeffrey Tucker over at the AIER brought up that much in his essay about it. Now, this consortium, it's not a true decentralized whatever. The plan is to eventually become decentralized. Me and you can't just start mining it tomorrow. We have to have, it's kind of like being a bank. Like you have to have certain capitalization. You have to have, you have to kind of like a bank. You have to have certain information architecture that's protected a certain way. That much I think that low, I think that raises the barrier to entry a little too high. But I get what they're doing because they're trying to be a parallel banking system. I mean, they're going to be they're going to implement know your customer laws. They're going to implement anti-money laundering, protocols. They're basically becoming a parallel financial system in order for them to be what I'd like to say is a parallel financial system. They're going to base the currency's spot price on a basket of fiat currencies. So that's kind of basically like IMF special drawing receipts, if you've ever heard of those. So they're basically becoming think of them as a parallel IMF, International Monetary Fund. And it's I like the concept. Now they're going to poo-poo it for a lot of reasons. One, there's going to be a lot of regulatory headwinds that'll be in the show notes, coming from Capitol Hill. Crazy Maxine Waters, anti-Maxine out there in your neck of the woods, wants them to hold off on anything before they release it. It's like, what are you talking about? Hold off. The currency doesn't launch until next year. Right, so I don't understand what they need to hold off for. There's just a 1,001 things, and I think if it was anyone but Facebook, it would probably be embraced. Even on the libertarian side, no one's trusting that Facebook won't have a hand in it. Even though the association it's set up is a subsidiary, not even a subsidiary, it's a separate thing. Like that Facebook just is a founding member of. But that won't be enough for those who
so what did they tie Facebook as the primary name to it just for marketing then, or I mean that's the only thing that I can think.
If you go to the Libra site, no, it is not Facebook Libra. We're saying that
gotcha.
As part of the vernacular here.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it is vernacular. I mean, that's the way it's being kind of
if you
jostled around in the media.
If you go to the media and the uninitiated and uneducated portions of the media, then yes. But realistically, the only real thing it'll be part of the overall pool of people who are obviously mining more as they move more toward a proof of stake. There'll be more forging. But validating the chain, there'll be one of many organizations that are validating the chain, and there'll be one of many organizations that have wallets. It's going to be an open platform, for the most part. So you can develop for it now. The API exists, everything exists. For you to start testing this stuff. A test net has already been set up. And they're going to come up with their Calibra wallet that'll be integrated. It'll be a separate app. It'll be integrated into WhatsApp. It'll be integrated into Facebook Messenger. So that's how they'll get their hooks into it. They want to be WeChat for the rest of the world. And you're familiar with WeChat. I don't know if we've explained it to the audience, but the WeChat in China is basically like your everything. Like imagine having Google Maps, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Instagram, Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats, OpenTable. Imagine your loyalty app for Walgreens or CVS, your Whole Foods, loyalty card or whatever. Imagine having your eBay, your everything in one app. That's WeChat in China.
Gotcha.
And so they want to try that because, Zuckerberg's wife is Chinese. He's been to China many times. And, if it wasn't for the fact that it's this all-encompassing app that knows everything about you in a very totalitarian state, WeChat actually sounds pretty cool. But, that's Facebook's play, right? They want to be the one app to rule
Right.
them all. And
They are doing it. They're constantly sucking other ones. I have sucking them up, but they're constantly absorbing other ones and kind of either copying their technology or, Snapchat, their big thing with the stories and copying that whole thing.
And
and
Instagram.
they're trying to do it. It's a little backhanded, but yeah.
And WhatsApp is I
works.
use it exclusively outside the country. Like when I'm outside the country, I use WhatsApp.
My wife uses WhatsApp all the time to talk to her friends in Ecuador and Spain.
So they know what they're doing. And even if it's this crypto, I hope it actually kind of succeeds, because if it succeeds, it validates other cryptocurrencies in the market, particularly because
I hope it brings more of a legitimacy to them too, or a I don't know about a legitimacy.
I think it just demystifies them.
There you go. Yeah,
and I think maybe hopefully people we can begin to onboard people into these other cryptocurrencies. I hope eventually the Libra incorporates in its basket of currencies maybe some of the more stable cryptocurrencies like XRP or Ethereum or whatever. Oh, another kind of story that I think is kind of one of many stories that is kind of validated it is just like one of the major not cryptocurrencies, but one of the major kind of I don't know if it was exchanges or somebody bought into MoneyGram. And I don't know if you're familiar with MoneyGram though, but I mean it's for when it comes to repatriation, like MoneyGram is like the second largest in the world. And I can't remember what crypto play. Yeah, XRP. So the guys that do like the Ripple currency. So so Ripple put a $50 million stake into MoneyGram to push it to deploy like its XRP as their kind of unit, or as their kind of back channel unit of exchange, and for using their blockchain and stuff. So you see these stories out there, one at a time, onesie twosies. Like some of these cryptocurrencies are real serious about things. I think Ethereum, like a lot of the concepts that Ethereum is based on, like because I actually specifically saw in some of the synopsises of the white paper for Libra, smart contracts. Those were things that were basically originally pioneered with the deployment of the Ethereum network in their blockchain, and these abilities to have smart contracts. These things that algorithmically kind of execute based on like conditions on the block. So
right.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I think it's a good thing. I don't like the messenger either. Facebook has been the bane of my existence. But at the end of the day, when I want to communicate with the normies out there, and
it's how you do it.
It's how I do it. I mean, Messenger.
Right.
If I could just use Messenger and not use Facebook, I'd be fine by me. But I still use Facebook because I still communicate with people all around the world. It is still like a 1 point. What is they have on their site here? It's still a 1.4 million person network.
Million?
Oh, I'm sorry, billion. I forgot there. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. No. It's like it's a 1.4 billion person network. Across all of the platforms. So one can't argue that they're going to have some heft when they deploy this next year. Even if you don't like it. Well, so I don't know. Any thoughts on that one, man? I mean, I think we beat that one to death with our suspicions, our hopes, and our dreams, and the possibility of it being, something that helps us validate our, cryptocurrency investments. Because I know mine's are in the toilet, but. All right, so I mean, I guess kind of to wrap things up here with the last topic. One that I'm going to use as an opportunity to now beat on the social justice idiots that I hated. For everyone who thought that the ending of net neutrality rules that had only been in effect for barely a year would lead to the absolute end of the internet, allow me to introduce the FCC chair that everyone hates, Ajit Pai's Victory Lap. So we were told that the world would end if these rules were repealed.
Yes.
Didn't it?
And the world ended. No, wait.
It didn't.
It didn't.
No.
Oh.
Gary, I think you're mistaken.
I am mistaken.
No.
What am I thinking about?
It could be the environment. It could be the election.
Oh, the environment exploded.
You're right.
Wait,
or
no,
the election of Donald
didn't.
Trump, or
Yes.
Brett Kavanaugh
Oh.
on the Supreme Court, or not kicking Steven Crowder off of YouTube. I mean, there's a litany of things that could have brought us
Yes.
to our impending final end. But
And it did it one after another.
and one after another.
It was amazing.
They were all proven to be BS. So the critics,
Yes, they were.
the critics were demonstrably wrong. Pai's statement has confirmed
Yes,
my
they were.
contention that the edge providers, not the ISPs, are the bigger threat. So basically, basically Pai said, like, yo, like, the greatest threat to the free and open internet has been unregulated Silicon Valley tech giants that do, in fact, today decide what you see and what you don't. That's right. It isn't ISPs. As I said many years ago when I argued with even my most tech-savvy friends, the edge providers have more influence on the bits that arrive at your desktop or on your phone than your ISPs. Your ISPs are common carriers already. They don't care what comes over their pipes. Be exact, for the most part, being that most traffic isn't most traffic like SSL or HTTPS or whatever. It's hard to.
Well, at this point, it's all encrypted. Yeah,
it's hard to see.
They can tell where it's going, where it's coming from, and about what size it is. But other than that,
yeah,
that's about it.
So technology had routed around the possibility of them throttling anything. So, the Pai continues. There's no transparency. There's no customer protections. And I think bipartisan members of both congressional chambers have now come to that realization. That is the part that scared me of that whole statement. While he is absolutely correct, he's absolutely true. He has been pretty much one of the best FCC chairmen we've had since ever. Because he was absolutely, positively going to go in with a hands-off approach. He was absolutely right. This has always been a threat for big tech, right? Back when they thought this was a great idea, back when they thought that net neutrality would be the end-all, be-all. I don't understand how so many people embrace this mass delusion of net neutrality.
It was a mass. It was a total sell on the fear that you were going to be controlled at your, in your home by an evil company that was going to say these bits get more priority than these, and people just somehow freaked out.
Yeah, they tended to think that that the ISPs were going to nickel and dime you for every site you visited on the internet.
Right.
That is absolutely proven.
Which is so stupid.
It was a silly argument. Newsflash.
But it had fear, and fear works.
And that's ultimately what led people to, even people who knew better, who have technical expertise, who ran ISPs, right? It's just like, well, we don't do. I was like, but we don't prioritize bits or anything. But Comcast Universal might. Yeah, okay. You're proving the point as to why we don't need to regulate Comcast Universal. The ultimate problem has always been competition. I mean, here's the deal. Like, they say, their investment in the internet infrastructure would isn't going to go up under this, stuff like that. In aggregate, it has. The other things that they were talking about that were stupid was like, they're going to, prioritizing bits, right? Well, that's how the internet worked anyway. Like,
right.
Bits are prioritized. Like, and funny, this whole thing started with a dispute between Verizon and Netflix. I remember back in like 2010 or whatever. And by the time the grassroots effort to stem up hatred for ISPs and for those hatreds to then manifest themselves in either legislation or rules making, the free market had already figured out this dispute. They had already, Netflix and Verizon had already squashed the dispute. And the market handled it. ISPs handled it. I mean, to think that there's no throttling of your content, there's no deprioritization of your content. All you have to do, create a website, bring up an AWS instance, and tell everyone and their mom to go to your website, and then get back with me in the first month when you get the bill. They paid you.
Right.
They paid you. Yeah, it's like they're going to charge you for every bit.
Yep.
Here's the deal. If you didn't pay for the right tier, those bits cost more. If you pay for a higher tier, those bits cost less. Isn't that prioritization of bits?
It's absolutely prioritization.
And it's like the way they were trying to regulate for the way the internet was 15 years ago, not the way the internet is today. And
that's typical of government, though. I mean, they're always looking in the past. Look, we've got these stupid freeway widening projects that are going on right now, right up, from where I live, and I know they're going to be obsolete the second they open.
Yeah.
Because all of the planning, all of the design, all of the studies were done 10 years ago before the traffic change, and that's a prime example.
Yeah.
The 405 freeway up through LA.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big widening project they did, and it was this huge media event when they blew up bridges and all this crazy stuff.
It was cool. Yeah. That inconvenienced the hell out of you guys too. I remember.
It did. It made so many people spend so much more time, so much more fuel, everything. They just came out with a report. Guess how much time it has saved people on their commutes?
Oh, I would assume less. Less than was originally anticipated, right?
Commute times have increased. And when I read that news report, I just cracked up. I just said, this is the world we live in. And what we're talking about is exactly right. They plan these things, they plan their legislation and everything off of data that's 10 years old and what else can they do, really? I mean, it's longitudinal data that's collected over time.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess what they can do and what would be a service to the people is to at least acknowledge that it's stale data,
right,
that it's old,
right,
and it does not necessarily reflect what the world is now and what it will be in 2 years.
But you're always sold the worst case scenario, right? You're all based on that data, right? Or even if the data shows like, well, there's not a problem now, like in the instance of net neutrality, there were no blatant instances of ISPs throttling. I think the only one they could point to was the fact that years before the Verizon Netflix this dispute, there was throttling of Bitcoin. I'm sorry, Bitcoin, but of BitTorrent traffic from certain ISPs. If you dig deep into that story, on the surface, oh yeah, they were obviously throttling that protocol. They were obviously throttling that because the RIAA and MPAA and whatever. No,
right.
If you dig deeper into that story, there was a flaw at the time. There was a flaw in the BitTorrent protocol that caused it to use more bandwidth and saturate lines. They fixed it, right? You can move all kinds of BitTorrent back. Be exact, I think a lot of the things like BitChute and all these other things actually use kind of similar swarming protocols like that now for delivery of video, which I think is actually a far superior way and actually a way to get around censorship. I only wish there was more investment in that infrastructure because BitChute over the past month has been a abysmal performance-wise, just because everyone's going there to get as an exodus from YouTube, because YouTube's become Gestapo-like in its like tactics of kicking people off and demonetizing. But
Right.
but that just goes to show you, right? Like, they don't, people just get on these kind of, I don't know if it's just a natural, it's my theory that they hate the big, and particularly leftist kind of tech journalists hate the big, and it insults it insults their sensibilities. And at the end of the day, like Mr. Chairman Pai can have a victory lap and basically point to them. It's like, no, it's the very same people who are advocating for this crap are the very same people that are actually doing much more to throttle or cater or even block what you see or say than any of the ISPs that you were trying to put this Title II like monstrosity on. And here's the thing that's even more frightening. Big tech, for many decades, had Republican, or people typically right of center, on their side every time the left would go after them for antitrust, every time they go after them for anti-competitive behavior. I mean, the staunchest defenders of Microsoft during their antitrust times were Republicans, right? Flash forward about 20 years, and now big tech has no friends. The left is always going to go after you because you're big, right? And you have too much influence. And now that you
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm agreeing with you.
But I mean,
it's like what we talked about a couple of episodes ago. Is if you're the big guy, you're the target. Period. Done.
End of
because you're gonna get the attention they need to project the fear that they somehow spin to get the votes that they need or the attention they need to, push their agenda. And
I think
that's the way the game works.
And that's that regulatory capture, the anatomy of which we have been seeing over the last, we've discussed over the last 3-4 episodes. And then you have the fact that like now you no longer have Republicans on Capitol Hill that are sympathetic to the ethos of Silicon Valley, right? They hate you now. They hate you just as much.
Right.
And Silicon Valley has no one to blame but itself for this. You've basically exposed your right flank, and now you're being attacked on both sides. And basically what you're going to get out of it is I told my daughter this the other day because we were looking at YouTube videos, and I look at a lot of Tim Pool, and Tim Pool has been very, very good on this. Now, he wants regulation, which I think, he's young. Doesn't quite understand it, like that never works. But, I mean, he's basically, my daughter asked, it's just like, well, why are they doing this and stuff like that? It's just like, hun, I've been alive, I'll tell my age, 40 years. I've seen antitrust. I've studied antitrust and experienced antitrust 3 times in my life. Every time it's happened, it's always taken years for them to drum up the case, years for them to drag the company through the courts. And by the time there's an ultimate verdict or a settlement, the player for which the government has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to go after is no longer the biggest player in the game. I've seen it all the time. Mm-hmm. But it kind of disappoints me because I'm a right of center guy, and I typically vote Republican from time to time. But now you have Republicans up there. I mean, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, all of them are just like, okay, then maybe we should regulate them. There you go. Game over. I mean, that's your MAGA, your right wing MAGA types, and those who are MAGA adjacent, now converging with the Elizabeth Warrens of the world to be like, okay, regulate big tech. Big tech, I'll tell you right now, man. Anyone who works at Facebook or Pinterest or Alphabet or whatever, you played yourself, yo. You played yourself, and now everyone's coming after you. And I'm going to continue to tote the libertarian line that they have every right to act as badly as they do, but understand that we live in the real world, and those ideological choices that you've been making have unintended consequences, and then now the chickens have come home to roost. And it's bad, man, because when these rules go online, they're going to they're going to cripple great companies, and they're going to make newer companies even that come up. I mean, it's
Yeah.
that's all I can say.
And completely misguided and everything. But hey, you know what? The politicians got their way. So
They will get now.
Yippee.
They'll ultimately get their way. But big up to Chairman Pai, who spoke out once again. He will be hated. He will be slandered in Polygon and Verge, TechCrunch, and everywhere else. Ars Technica in particular.
But hey, thank you for your servers.
we salute you, Chairman Pai. We salute you.
Yes, we do.
We don't oftentimes do hero worship, but he's been about 95% on since he took over. He's been the best thing that's happened to the FCC. He's right. It's always been the edge providers. It's never been the ISPs. So, any closing thoughts on the stories of the day? Anything we forgot about? Anything else you'd want to? I don't know.
I'm gonna get back in the groove here this next week. Start reading some articles and doing something. Honestly, my life has been so packed with just personal issues and dramas and end of school year and the things that you have to just do that I haven't even had the energy to
and on behalf
to get excited
of
about
the
it.
Audience and myself, I would like to thank you for your service to the Thank You for Your Service podcast.
Whoa,
man! I mean, I'm glad I have a co-host, and I know it's hard to get together, but man, it's we're doing pretty well, and I think we're starting to click, and we'll definitely get back to deep dives and stuff like that. I mean, the only thing I got going, to close things out is like, Gab got banned from, I guess, the App Store development, I guess. And I think there's also some other news of some other deep dive stuff. I really want to get a deep dive into like machine learning and AI, like fact versus fiction. I definitely want to slap down some like 5G, Alex Jones type conspiracy theories about that stuff. I've been getting kind of some requests through back channels of like, hey, break that stuff down, because, certain people are getting paranoid about 5G. And I need to kind of tell everybody to pump the brakes and let's throw some science at it so people understand that it's not like the end of the world. Stop watching RT. So,
Sure.
that's all I got to say, and that's all we've got. And I think with that said, I think we should probably close out. Thank you guys for logging in to Thank You for Your Servers. We'll be back with another episode soon.